Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for our Industry Innovators webinar. My name is Rebecca Fleming, and I'm an HR consultant with the HR Advantage. If you haven't had a chance to work with us, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you. So we're a dedicated HR management partner for small to medium-sized businesses. We provide outsourced HR support, health and safety, payroll, marketing, general employment or occupational health and safety compliance, and operational support so that owners and leaders like yourself can focus on growing your business. We're a team of specialists who get to know your business like it's our own. So whether we're supporting you with recruiting, navigating employment or safety legislation, processing payroll, which is not my personal favorite thing to do, but we have some rock star consultants who can manage your payroll for you, or you just need support with building a better workplace culture, we offer hands-on support that's both strategic and practical. And that's one of my favorite things about working here at the HR Advantage is just the variety of support that we can provide to our clients. So one day I might be working on job descriptions, and the next I'm thrown into working on some safety stuff to prep an employer for their core compliance or their core audit. So I really appreciate the breadth of experience that our team brings, and we really exist to take the weight of HR and compliance off of your plate by being proactive, responsive, and really rooted in solutions. So today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, which is hygiene in the workplace. So why does it matter? What legal and policy considerations do I need to be aware of? Maybe how to handle some common scenarios, some tools and resources, and then how to escalate and request further support if you might need it. Now, whether we like it or not, hygiene is a workplace concern. It really does affect team dynamics and client impressions when things are not going the way that you would like them to. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more in detail. I'm going to give you an example. It's a timely topic, I think, as we move into what's hopefully a warm remainder of the summer. Coming to you from Southern Alberta, it's been rainy most of July. Hopefully we, fingers crossed, have a warmer August upcoming. But picture that you have a rock star employee who's bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience to your industry. They're out and about in the hot August weather, visiting clients, doing sales calls. They've been able to hit their goals. They're bringing in increased revenue for you. They've really helped you improve on their processes and move into different markets that you didn't know were available. Everything seems to be going really well until you get a complaint from a customer about their body odor and their presentation during a meeting. So you're not alone if you groaned and you thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle this properly? It's going to be really uncomfortable. And you know what? You're not alone. Often employers will avoid dealing with these, or they might mishandle these concerns because it is sensitive. And while you want to address the concern promptly so that your clients and your employees feel safe and supported, you also want to make sure that the employee is not embarrassed and you don't make what's potentially a bad situation worse. So when we're talking about workplace hygiene, we're really talking about things like body odor complaints, maybe something to do with a physical appearance, if it's a bad breath situation or a tooth concern or something that appearance-wise brings a bit of concern about their hygiene. We can also talk about things like office or desk cleanliness. Perhaps their floor of their work truck looks like your daughter's room after a sleepover. There's lots of stuff on the floor, and when they're driving around clients, it's just an uncomfortable situation. We could be talking about their desk cleanliness or organization. Maybe they're leaving lots of tissues around, or all their dirty Tupperware is stacking up. We could be talking about things like presentation, so wearing like dirty or soiled or ripped clothing, or not adhering to your dress code that you might have for client calls. And anything to do with hygiene really, and the potential for harassment or bullying or other discrimination all kind of bundles up under that hygiene is actually a workplace concern topic that we're here to talk about. So really want to underscore, while we're having this conversation and while you're having these conversations with your employees, think about this differently and think about hygiene at work being about comfort, communication, and respect for everybody involved. So not just the person that you're addressing, but the people that it might affect in the workplace. So other staff, other contractors, clients, different people that might be involved, they need to be feeling comfortable, communicated with appropriately, and feel respected during the whole situation, because you know what? It can be a little bit uncomfortable. That said, it's really important for us to talk about the legal and policy considerations with regards to hygiene in the workplace. So first, want to flag that there are human rights components with regards to this topic. For example, if there are any sort of cultural or medical restrictions or accommodations or other considerations that you need to be aware of. For example, somebody might have a religion that requires something of them in terms of their dress code, or they might have a medical restriction or a condition that presents itself in a way that makes it difficult for them to maintain proper hygiene. Those are all really important things that we need to be aware of when we're navigating this topic. Same with the employee's privacy. So want to make sure that their concerns are kept private. So we don't want any sort of gossip, bullying, inadvertent sharing of medical or sensitive cultural things with the rest of the workplace. Really need to keep privacy at the forefront of this topic for you as a leader. But then also remembering that you do have occupational health and safety obligations as an employer to make sure that you're providing a clean, safe workplace for all of your employees. So this is really important in like high risk environments, whether you're working in like a hospital or a medical environment, or it is high risk because of the nature of work that you're doing. Or maybe it's a shared office environment where you have lots of people in really close quarters. Think kind of back to maybe some call center environments or where you don't have appropriate separation or personal space. All of these sorts of things are really important for you to consider when you're navigating through hygiene in the workplace. And then finally, if you have any sort of policies already within your organization, and what I mean by that is that you might already have things documented in terms of a dress code or hygiene in the workplace. For example, you might have language like employees are expected to maintain reasonable personal hygiene, or they're expected to wear a certain uniform or keep clothing in good repair. Those are all policies that are definitely relevant while we're addressing hygiene in the workplace. So let's talk about some real world scenarios that I am bringing to you from my previous experience as an HR professional. So imagine that you have a front office admin at your office who has body odor that's unfortunately been noticed by colleagues. And the colleagues bring it forward to you and say, hey, you know what? I'm really worried about this. I'm worried what clients are going to think. They're really near to the waiting room. They're supposed to be giving a good first impression. And I'm just generally concerned that something is not right here. It's obviously going to be something that you want to address, not only for your business side of things, but just to make sure that everything's okay with your employees. So first off, I will say always that make sure you're holding a private and respectful conversation. So consider the privacy piece. Don't have this conversation at their desk in front of a client waiting room or in an open office environment where people might be able to hear. Pull them aside to a meeting room, to your office, take them maybe for a coffee in a private location or something like that. And when you're having that discussion, consider appropriate timing too, right? Don't have this conversation right before somebody goes into a big client presentation or before they're due to take off and go to an important client meeting or something like that. Make sure maybe you do it at the end of the day or do it before the lunch break if the person needs a little bit of time to kind of gather themselves after the conversation. And really, when you have that conversation, you're going to frame it just very simply, but be very sensitive and very clear. So you're going to approach it and say, you know what, this has come to my attention. It's fair and it's important for me to share it with you so that you're aware of what's going on in the workplace, that somebody has brought it to my attention that your body odor is noticeable and potentially causing impact with our clients and our first impressions. And I wanted to check in with you and see if there's anything that I can do to support you in addressing this concern. Now, you really don't need to go further than that. Kind of turn it over to the employee and see what they have to say. I can most of the time tell you that the person is probably going to feel pretty embarrassed. They're going to hopefully say, you know what, I'm so sorry this happened. I didn't have time to shower or do XYZ in the morning, and that's impacted the concern. I will make sure to kind of handle it better. And make sure that you say, you know what, thanks so much. Let me know if there's anything that I can do to support you. And then from your perspective, let them know about your expectations. So say, yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to discuss this with me today. It's important for our clients to have a good first impression of the office. And it's important for everybody at work to feel safe and supported, like it's a good, safe work environment for everybody to come into. So hopefully that, fingers crossed, is how a simple, easy conversation will go. Make sure that you don't use any sort of slang or colloquial language or diminish what they might be feeling or share anything outside of kind of hitting at the root core of addressing the hygiene concern in the workplace. So another example that might be more applicable to your work environment is about a messy shared work truck. So for example, you have a construction worker who's leaving their truck and tool trailer super messy. There's food wrappers, moldy Tupperware containers. They're not putting away or cleaning up their tools. And this is just causing an overall headache on job sites. So employees don't feel like they want to get into this person's truck to go travel to job sites. They can't find tools when they're on the site because there's garbage everywhere in the tool trailer. And then the next crew who needs to use it is just not set up for success. So you might approach this a little bit differently, but the general overarching guidance is the same. So let's have a private discussion. Let's be respectful, share what's come to their attention or come to my attention as a leader. Let them know what your expectations are, that they do keep the tool trailer in a clean, safe manner for the next crew to be using. Let them know that this applies to the truck, the tool trailer, it applies to the people who are at the office. You have the same expectations for everybody. And let them know that you're here to support them if they need any support or challenges or experiencing anything like that that might impact their ability to keep things clean and abide by the expectations that you have for your work trucks, your tool trailers, all of that kind of stuff. Some other ways that you might look to address it too is you could consider doing some sort of reminder or signage. Maybe you want to include this in a toolbox talk. Maybe you have an employee newsletter or an employee SharePoint or Google Drive or something that you support employees in posting notices or that sort of thing. Those are all appropriate ways of kind of setting expectations in this topic as well. And sometimes those can be natural segues into the conversation, saying, hey, we just reposted the policy regarding workplace hygiene and cleanliness. Please just take a quick moment to make sure that your tool trailer and your truck is fitting in with those expectations, because I've noticed there's a couple of things. So that kind of segue can help to broach the topic a little bit more naturally as well. So lots to consider. There's lots of different real world scenarios that we could talk to you about here, but really want to make sure that we recap and focus with having a private, respectful meeting, keep it to the point, offer support resources, and then also make sure that you're setting expectations and opening the door for follow-up if somebody needs support. Now, kind of looking at hygiene from a little bit of a different lens, we're going to talk about illness and hygiene expectations post-COVID. So we all kind of remember what changed in regards to our work environment during the COVID pandemic. And now that we're kind of on the other side of that, for lack of a better word, it's really interesting to notice that working from office environments and working in person when you're sick is a lot different than it used to be before the pandemic. So I remember sometimes coming into the workplace really sick, and it sometimes is a badge of honor to be working from the office while you were sick, right? And that's really not as accepted anymore. There's definitely a lot more opportunity for remote work. Obviously, here I'm working from home recording this, and so I'm fortunate to be able to not have to worry about that as much as I did when I was working in the office, and sometimes in winter when colds are coming about, and when kids go back to daycare and start school in September, you're bringing home lots more illness. But it's important in this situation to be aware of everybody in your workplace and how that might affect them. So I'm going to give you a really personal example to me. A couple of years ago, my father-in-law was battling cancer, and a coworker of mine came into work and she had strep throat. And my father-in-law was super sick at the time, and it was like a very close office environment, and she was really close to me, and I was kind of uncomfortable because if I were to get sick, I might pass that along to my husband, or I might pass that along to my father-in-law, and he might have really dire kind of effects of getting sick at this point in his treatment, right? So I was really new to the company, and I was like, you know what? I don't really know how to handle this. I don't know how sickness is kind of treated at this organization, if there are opportunities for remote work. I just kind of felt a little bit uncomfortable. So I brought it to my manager, and she was really great. She took it to my employee and said, you know what? This has come to my attention. I'd really like you to take care of yourself. Please go work from home for the rest of the day, the rest of the week, whatever you might need. It's just really important for not only your own well-being, but the well-being of people around you. We don't want to cause kind of a mass illness spreading around the office. So please take that kind of under advisement. Let me know if there's anything that you need me to take off of your plate in terms of your work, that sort of thing. And it was really appreciated on my end. It made me feel supported. And I think that it kind of opened the eyes of my coworker to say, you know what, this isn't necessarily something that I need to be worried about working in the office over. I can definitely go work from home to finish the remainder of my task. And so that was a really good outcome for working from home as an option while dealing with an illness. But I want to just be clear that you could potentially have an employee who's taking advantage of working from home due to illness. And in those kinds of situations, there's really no one size fits all approach that I can easily guide you through on this webinar. But I'd certainly encourage you to come talk to us, talk to an HR professional if you have one at your organization about how to handle those one-offs that are just maybe not sitting right. Maybe this person has a cold every Friday over the summer months and you're kind of getting a little bit suspicious. Those are certainly things that we want to make sure that you're handling appropriately, but they can be a little bit sensitive and specific to your work environment, your client needs, your other employee needs, that sort of thing. So come talk to us and we're happy to help. Now, I mentioned it previously, but going through some tools and templates for employers. So if you don't have one already, it's a really great example to just include simple policies or guidance in your code of conduct or in a separate standalone policy or your health and safety documentation about expected hygiene. So if you have expectations regarding dress or wearing uniforms or coming to work in a reasonable state of cleanliness, for lack of a better word, we can help you finesse some of those policy statements and figure out how to easily roll those out to people so that you're prepared when something does come up and you can hopefully nip things in the bud. Can also help you with preparing some communication scripts. So I mentioned a few slides ago how I would approach the conversation, just very briefly kind of set the rationale for why you're meeting, what you've noticed, and then following up with your expectations and offering further support. It really doesn't need to be anything more than that for your initial conversation about hygiene in the workplace, but would definitely recommend that you prep a little bit. Maybe you need to run it off of your spouse or go chat with a colleague or your leader yourself to figure out, this is how I'm thinking of approaching it. Can I practice it a few times? Also thinking about some tools for employers in different work environments. So maybe toolbox talks are appropriate for you. I recently did a toolbox talk for a client. It's something that we provide to lots of our health and safety clients here at HR Advantage, but I prepped a toolbox talk for them that just reminded people about shop housekeeping. So keeping their personal Tupperwares and garbage all organized so that they can really avoid having any of those distractions in the work environment. Same with the summer months. As I mentioned, hopefully we continue to see some sunny weather in August, but it's a timely reminder for your toolbox talk. Say, hey, you know what? It's really hot out there. Here's how to take care of yourself in the heat. And then that kind of provides you a natural segue into talking about workplace hygiene. And then that kind of gives you a little bit of a reference point if you have to have any sort of additional further follow-up conversations about hygiene in the workplace. Now, obviously, the examples that I gave you for the purposes of our Industry Innovators chat today are best case scenario. It's really impossible to go over all of the different cases that are going to come up when you're dealing with anything HR or safety related, but just really important to be aware of when you might need to escalate something. So if you do have that conversation with the employee and it doesn't go well, or you think, you know what, I think there's something else going on here. Maybe the person is not doing well from a mental health perspective, or maybe they are having sort of medical concerns, or maybe they need some kind of medical accommodation while they're dealing with an acute medical concern. Be aware that those are all things that could come up. So maybe you need to refer them to an employee and family assistance program, or if you have any sort of other benefit support for mental health resources, there's lots of publicly available ones as well. So here in the city of Calgary, we have 211, which can connect people with supports. There's mental health associations, that sort of thing. So lots of different support that you can provide to people if they do need help. And then also requesting medical documentation. So I'm not going to touch on this too much because it is something that's very nuanced. So if you do get an inkling of a medical concern contributing to hygiene in the workplace, I would certainly recommend that you come talk to an HR professional, because there are some restrictions and limitations as to what information you are privy to from the employer side of things. So just letting you know that that could potentially be an outcome of the hygiene conversation is needing to delve into a little bit further, but there's lots of privacy considerations when you're doing that. So there's also the potential that these types of conversations could escalate into progressive discipline or accommodation. So what we mean by that is, in the case of a tool trailer that's not being cleaned up properly, if somebody's not putting their tools away at the end of a shift and you've gone over this with them, they have no real good rationale as to why this is not occurring. You've set up your expectations, you've put it in toolbox talks, newsletters, signage in the trailer, and things are not improving. there might be the potential that you need to move to progressive discipline. So what that looks like will kind of depend on the situation. Generally speaking, you might have a formal documented conversation. You might move to something in terms of written discipline, that sort of thing. So it is a potential. I would just caution you about having that as an outcome for anything that's kind of related to like personal body odor. It can be a little bit of a sticky topic. And we also kind of talked about accommodation as well. If there is a potential for a medical issue or a mental health issue to be contributing to some of these concerns, there is the potential, and employers do have a duty to accommodate their employees when that's required. So all of these things are potential outcomes of hygiene in the workplace. But I really want to thank you for joining us today and going through how to handle these concerns with sensitivity, consistency, and courage. And so I always like to encourage leaders in any facet that I'm working with them on is it means acting early. So being proactive in your leadership abilities and not reacting too late. Often by the time we react to things, they've been going on for a long period of time, and it's really hard to get a handle on them, and it just can feel a little bit overwhelming. So I would certainly encourage you to come talk to the HR Advantage or an HR professional of your choice if you need support with handling hygiene in the workplace. Now, I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm going to go over a couple of super quick rapid fire question and answers here. First off, going to recap how you're going to approach the conversation with the employee. So make sure it's private, make sure it's objective so that you're providing objectively what information you have or you've been provided, outlining the impacts, inquiring about support, and setting expectations. Next, we're going to how do we balance respect for cultural norms with workplace hygiene standards? You're really going to take it back to focusing on the impact of the person's situation with the rest of your employees or the rest of your clients, and work to find a compromise that works for everybody, because you do have a duty as an employer to focus on everybody and the impact on them. And the standards should be there. They should be universal, but they sometimes do need to be flexible. And then, isn't hygiene an HR issue? I always chuckle when people say things are HR issues, because managers or supervisors will often become aware of concerns first, and we can certainly support you. I'm here to help you as a leader move through many facets of your business, but for proper follow-up, expectation setting, and approaching the conversation in a timely manner, we really need to approach it together, and I'm here to arm you with how to deal with it for the future. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mackenzie, the owner of HR Advantage. I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. Please give a quick little visit to our website to see some of the other supports that we offer to business leaders. And then our email is hello@hradvantageservices.com. Thank you so much.